Today we're taking a look at Razer's new top-tier controller for the Xbox Series X, S, Xbox One, and PC, the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma. Since transitioning from creating mainly PC peripherals, Razer has made a bunch of cool products that are worth buying. So let's take a closer look at why this controller is one of my favorites to date. Now, the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma takes a lot from the Wolverine V2 and adds a few features like the mappable multifunction buttons at the back, as well as the addition of Razer Chroma. For starters, when you open the box, you will be greeted with the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma front and center, as well as two different thumbsticks, one that is taller than the stock ones that are installed, and then one that is rounded out instead of in. And then if you open up the bottom of the box, you will be greeted with the USB-C to USB Type-A cable, as well as your user manual. Now, when it comes to the look of the controller, I have to say I am a fan. It looks very similar to that of a standard Xbox controller, but it does have this sort of matte finish, and the Razer logo that kind of just shines through really makes it look very classy. And then of course the grips that extend to the front and has that little chroma pinstripe really makes the controller look pretty cool. And then as far as functionality goes, this controller does have a lot to offer. It has two interchangeable thumbsticks, it has mecha tactile buttons for the A, B, Y, and X buttons, as well as the D-pad. The sticks themselves feel really stiff and bounce back really easily to their original position. And then of course you also have your 6 mappable buttons, where 4 of them are at the back and 2 are on the top. Now, from my hands, reaching those back buttons really weren't that hard, but it also wasn't the most comfortable thing to do, meaning that if you have smaller hands or if you have small hands, then of course reaching those buttons could be somewhat of a difficult task. So if you are someone who is going to make use of those buttons, just bear in mind that if you have small hands, it could be harder to reach. And I really wish they went for something a little bit more easy to press, or just move those buttons a little bit more to the sides of the controller, rather than having them as deep in on the controller as they are. Now, the reason why they opted to move those buttons in a little bit closer is probably to prevent you from accidentally pressing those buttons while in use. But then of course that also makes it a little bit more harder for most people to really just use those buttons, and can actually make it harder to use those buttons or make them unusable for other people. Now, as far as the overall feel of this controller goes, I really enjoyed how it felt in hand. It was a really comfortable controller. The fact that the grips extend to the front as well really made it that much more grippy on the front as well to use. Then the fact that it's also 270 grams really makes it not that heavy, and it almost fades away while you're playing games. Then as far as the mecha tactile buttons go, they felt really good to use. They also sounded really good, as they give you that satisfaction of using a mechanical keyboard without actually having a mechanical keyboard. The thumbsticks are really precise, and they're also pretty stiff, so they do bounce back pretty quickly, and it also makes it a little bit easier to use in situations where you have to aim or counter recoil. Then the mappable buttons do come in handy for some titles. Even though I didn't really use the 4 mappable buttons at the back, I mainly used the top 2, as they felt a little bit more comfortable to use and quicker to use in situations. And then lastly, you have the ability to switch to hair trigger mode by locking the triggers with the lockable buttons at the back. And if that is something that you need, then of course you do have that as well. And if you want to map your buttons, you will do that within the Razer controller setup for Xbox app. And all you have to do there is actually select the mappable button that you want to use. And then once you have selected that button, all you do is select the button that you want to assign to it. And of course, you can assign any button on the controller to any of the mappable buttons. It's up to you. Another cool thing that you can add to any of the mappable buttons is the sensitivity clutch mode. And what the sensitivity clutch mode does is it actually reduces the sensitivity of either your left or your right stick. And what that does is it actually reduces the sensitivity of that stick while you're holding down that mappable button. So in cases where you might need to snipe or you might need a little bit more precision, all you do is assign it to that button, assign the sensitivity that you want while holding down that trigger, and that is it. Overall, the Wolverine V2 Chroma is an amazing controller for anybody looking for an excellent controller that feels good in hand, performs really well, and has a lot of mappable buttons. So if you're a controller player and you're looking for the next controller for your setup, definitely have a look at the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma. It is an excellent controller, it performs really well, it feels really good in hand, and it has a bunch of features and mappable buttons. And who knows, you might just fall in love with it. And that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions on this controller or any other controller, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below or by reaching out to me on any of my other social media platforms. And then until next time, cheers.